and is accustomed to using the laws of industrial civilization and information civilization to explain, study and judge financial problems. The development of the securities market according to geometric series conforms to the laws of financial civilization, but meets the logic of industrial civilization regulation and intervention according to the development of arithmetic progression. The so-called P/E ratio, securitization rate and valuation model in the inherent knowledge system have been repeatedly denied by the market, but they are still regarded as the supreme. Being conservative towards traditional knowledge and unable to understand the arrival of a new civilization may result in schizophrenia. Integrating and responding to the four civilizations in a timely manner will lead to a winner-take-all in the market. Ownership, superstition and state motivation. In the first half of GDP grew by %. Foreign trade showed a year-on-year decline. Inflation was high, and small and medium-sized enterprises were struggling. Sad. Bankruptcy has become a trend. Regarding this situation, the relevant parties are both very vigilant and very anxious. Based on continuous meetings and discussions, they have decided to change the macro tuning from dual prevention to one protection and one control, and have made sufficient articles on protection. In terms of policy rescue itself, it is understandable, but if analyzed from the perspective of macro adjustment history, today's scene is precisely the period of macro adjustment back then, and the current situation proves the remarkable achievements of macro adjustment. The reason why we dare not recognize the macro adjustment results is that the protection and pressure distribution of macro adjustment policies is uneven, which is basically characterized by the protection of state-owned enterprises and the laissez-faire of private enterprises, starting from the tight monetary and land supply in this end of regulation. The GEM has been delayed. Private enterprises have no access to financing, and state-owned enterprises and central enterprises can queue up to go public. The vast number of low-end enterprises in the industrial upgrading have completely lost their protection, and central enterprises take the opportunity to regain lost land and complete industry monopolies and market division, such as telecommunications. This result naturally cannot be accepted calmly by private enterprises. Therefore, the political foundation that can ensure the transformation of economic growth mode is fairness and justice. And based on this, policies can be revised the intention and effectiveness of the measures. Otherwise, the political show of Yugong Hailong will greatly undermine the government's credibility and make the cost of trial and error increasingly high. A prerequisite for establishing a political foundation based on fairness and justice is the establishment of a new concept of the country and a new concept of the people. That is, the understanding of the state transcends the violent machine in the stage of class conflict, but is independent of social entities, represents the common interests of all members of society, and takes the establishment of rules and regulations, maintenance of rules, and provision of public services as the main national motivation. Only when the national motivation is pure and selfless can the political principle of fairness and justice not be excluded. The new concept of the people is to restore the people from abstract concepts and exploitable slogans to specific individuals and interest groups. Only through the evolution of negation and negation can the people-oriented people find a realistic career, and the specific interests of people be respected, rather than being a broad concept. The difficulty of transforming this concept lies in encountering the resistance of traditional ideology and the covert boycott of vested interest groups. Another prerequisite is the upgrade of the governance concept. That is, the upgrade of the version of making decisions for the people, which is undertaken by everyone, upgrading from limited liability to a limited and bounded management model that leads social rules and maintains their fair execution. Previously, the direct participation of the state in the operation and operation of the economy inevitably led to self-interest, resulting in impure motives for the state. However, when the state is above economic interests and only serves as the creator and maintainer of the system, the transformation of its role creates a natural demand for the principles of fairness and justice. The controversial labor contract law, to some extent, is a manifestation of the shift in national motivation from favoring enterprises to providing universal coverage for the interests of workers. It is a transition from a focus on efficiency first to a balance between fairness. Despite its poor timing, it is still a landmark milestone, because the more a few people resist, the more they can reflect that it actually represents the interests of the majority and touches the pain points of interest groups. At present, it is the ministry of power that undermines the principles of fairness and justice, distorts the state's motives seriously, and causes even greater public discontent. The phenomenon of door-oriented, departmental interest-oriented, and interest group-oriented, many authorities use the name of the state to harm the people and enrich the private sector, and practice monopoly under the guise of maintaining fairness and justice. This distorts the essence and core of the national political system, which means that the state represents the interests of the entire society and the nation, and implements its representation through various state machines. However, in reality, various state machines become representatives of the state and fulfill the interests of their own departments in the process of representation. This deviation is the source of social contradictions at this stage. The real reason for the large-scale mass incident in Wengan County, Guangzhou, is that the government has repeatedly violated the interests of the masses in mineral resources development, resettlement, building demolition and other work, and in the process of handling conflicts, disputes and mass incidents. Some cadres have a rough style, simple working methods and random use of police force. Although the stock market was in a mess in the first half of the year, there were still over billion-yuan in stamp duty receipts, and local state-owned asset management commissions are still preparing to queue up local state-owned enterprises for listing. In 80% this situation undermines the balance between power and responsibility, thus making the political philosophy of the country the opposite of the trend. The main reason for domestic terrorist incidents to occur is the lack of national social and persona responsibility matching refers to the contradiction and conflict of interests among the three parties being greater than harmony and consistency, and the destruction of this trinity relationship still stems from the division of interests and the imbalance between enjoying power and assuming responsibility. If national responsibility is still understood as unlimited joint and several responsibility for all actions, then as much hope as disappointment, national responsibility will be more manifested in providing and ensuring equal opportunities for individuals, and providing transfer payments to some vulnerable groups. In addition, the ability to provide normal channels and platforms for communication and exchange, so that fairness and justice can effectively play a role in handling unfair events, is also a requirement for national responsibility. Social responsibility is reflected in providing individuals with opportunities and conditions for free competition. Only on this basis can individuals have the possibility of equal competition, and only then can they not complain and hate society in the event of failure. The premise for all of this is still that the country is independent of social interests and has a responsibility for national power and borders. A clear definition of the boundary involves a fundamental issue in China's current economic structure: ownership superstition. Breaking this superstition has become the top issue in deepening reform and purifying national motivation. In the process of market-oriented reform in China, the relationship between state-owned assets and private assets does indeed reflect the trend of returning from abroad and advancing with the people. However, national retreat does not necessarily equate to democratic progress, and the weight of the two is not a trade-off in the adjustment process. In fact, the current situation is that state-owned assets are constantly strengthening and consolidating, while private assets are constantly being sacrificed and hovering on the edge. Although the 12th National Congress began to put forward common ownership as the main body and other forms of ownership as beneficial supplements, the National Congress put forward common ownership as the main body and a variety of economic sectors developed together for a long time. The National Congress determined common ownership as the core and non-public economy as an important part of the socialist market economy, and then the National Congresses put forward equal enjoyment of national treatment. This is just a document. Ownership superstition has become the main obstacle to the transformation of national motivation, as it prevents the country from directly participating in the economy and competing for the interests of the people, and also provides opportunities for departmental interests to the representative functional departments of the national machinery, hindering the upgrading of the national version. The coexistence and common development of multiple forms of ownership is the economic foundation for achieving political power differentiation, and also the basis for effectively defining the power and responsibility of the state, society, and individuals. The awkwardness of the non-public articles has already proven the predicament of private capital. In view of this, the most committed step of the purification of national motivation came on the scene, which is the most controversial: judicial independence. It is precisely because of the above problems that the motivation of judicial independence is doubted. The biggest mistake is the understanding of the concept of the state. So far, the analysis in this paper shows that the state has gone beyond the scope of the class conflict violence machine and represents the general concept of all the people. In this case, judicial independence has become a means of balancing various functional departments within the state machine. Instead of being independent of the state machine, it threatens the operation of the state machine itself and brings endless internal strife, increases transaction costs, and reduces the efficiency of the state machine. So if a country breaks away from the superstition of ownership, it will not hinder the implementation of the principles of fairness and justice due to its own interests. It will also make mutual checks and balances within the state machinery, such as judicial independence, inevitable, and the state's motives will not be distorted and become the cause of conflicts of interest. The foundation of a harmonious society can only be considered settled. The usefulness of commodities to human beings proposes utility value, and reveals various needs in human nature. Bentham's utilitarianism, marginal schools utility theory, Dewey's pragmatism. Due to significant differences in understanding industrial civilization, it has been in constant conflict since its inception. Until the Cold War in the second half of the 20th century, industrial civilization has gone through hundreds of years, and its laws have been effective in 100 years. Marx's Das Kapital, Marshall's Economics, and Keynes' general theory of employment, interest and money are classics, and indeed guide the socio-economic operation. In the mid to late 20th century, with the popularization of computers and the Internet, information civilization entered human society. The characteristic of information civilization is that the spread of social induction and information transmission is very fast, greatly changing the original production and lifestyle. For example, computers have changed traditional manufacturing technology and production processes, and the Internet has changed people's consumption and communication methods. Toffler once provided a phenomenal description of information civilization but did not touch upon the fundamental principles. The general equivalent of information civilization is information. Wherever there are many concepts, money flows there and wealth is generated. The new economy that originated in the US is a concentrated manifestation of information civilization, with NASDAQ being a representative of information civilization, and a large number of digital heroes becoming beneficiaries of information civilization. It has only been 30 years since the emergence of information civilization, during which there have been countless changes. Moreover, The philosophical foundation of information civilization is the principle of uncertainty, which makes it difficult to summarize unchanging laws. Therefore, in recent decades, it has been difficult to come up with grand works that have taken decades. From the above civilization process, it can be seen that the evolution of civilization is accelerating from thousands, hundreds of years to decades year. Nowadays, there are many phenomena in the social economy that are different from the forms of civilization in the past, and various phenomena cannot be explained by past knowledge. The financial industry is playing an increasingly important role in some countries, surpassing the functions of any single industry. For example, the amount of tax paid by the high earners in the City of London has accounted for a quarter of the tax income of the whole UK. And a quarter of the UK corporate tax also comes from this region, which is generally the case for Wall Street in the United States. Once China's securities industry was launched, it developed with the thunderous momentum. In just over a decade, the stock market value increased by over